What's going on, guys? It's Fear Turbo here, and today we're going to talk about my Combustion build for the Morrowind patch. Now, this build is going to have a couple different setups here. We're going to be using, region food with light attack build. We're going to be using a heavy attack variation of the VMA daggers, and then we're going to take a look at non-traditional things that we've been doing. So, in previous patches, we've been using standard. Now we got a new gear set in here that deals with low-cost ultimates, being better for your class, etc. So we're going to take a look at that. So let's get right in on the gear. So Two-Fang Snake, no brainer. Big deeps here from that. Again, you can get this from Veteran. Ooh, I can't say that. Veteran Sanctum Ophidian, right? Okay, got it. I believe you can get it on normal, but I could be wrong there. But if you can get it on normal, it's extremely easy to get. So we have Two-Fang Snake body, 5 pieces here. They're going with 3 Vicious Ophidian, or you can do 3 Alkosh, I believe. Yeah, Alkosh is the same, 2-piece, 3-piece. And Krog. So Krog will give you massive penetration. Obviously, you want Defiance, medium, and it's going to give you 1,935. That means you can go 1 precise weapon, which is going to give all of your damage 3.5% critical, which is very effective. And a back bar Maelstrom Sharpened Bow. If you don't have a Maelstrom Sharpened Bow, you can use a Master Bow Sharpened. If you don't have a Master or Maelstrom, all these M's, then you can use a Crafted Bow with a Weapon Damage Enchant. So basically, guys, so this is the previous setup. Again, nothing new, nothing got shaken up, nothing crazy. If you use Veladreth right here instead of Krog, you would want to use Veladreth if you can't be right up on the boss all the time. So Krog has a little short distance there, but it procs a lot, and when it does proc, it does actually better damage than Veladreth when you get it up close. I guess depending on how you did your CP, obviously if you went more Master at Arms, you'd get more out of Veladreth. If you went more into dot damage, which you should on a DK, then you would get more out of Krog. So, and the penetration 1 piece is a no-brainer. You're looking at 129 weapon damage, and and 2 sharpened, or you're looking at, where the hell did it go? 139 penetration and 3.5% crit. The 3.5% crit is better than 129 weapon damage. So that's why I like to use Krog. Again, this variation of this build will have light attack build with regen food. It'll have heavy attack build with regular food, and it will have all my gears all over the place. Yes, and of course I don't have divines yet, so that. This, and I believe this at the bottom. So War Machine, right? So with this, we wouldn't want to use our traditional standard ult, right? Again, I'd have to probably do some more testing, but obviously you wouldn't get a high uptime on Major Slayer, but you would get 30% extra damage for that 10 seconds, and then another 7 of 15% because standard lasts longer. That might be pretty OP for things like the 3rd boss of Halls of Fabrication, right? If you drop a standard at the start of the fight, you get Major Slayer for 10 seconds, and you get standard for 17 seconds. That's a massive burst window. So if you're looking at terms of burst, then standard War Machine would actually be very strong if you can get that ultimate up. So say like the 4th boss of Halls of Fabrication. I know I use Halls of Fabrication a lot, but this is pretty much where this term comes into bursting. So the 3rd boss walks into the laser, he gets knocked down, you drop a standard, you have Major Slayer and the standard buff, big time DPS right there. The 4th boss, when there's 3 bosses and they bring them into the center, they get knocked down, you would have 30% extra damage there as well to all your AoE abilities, because you want to cleave all of them at the same time, etc., etc. But in terms of Major Slayer uptime, standard is definitely not good. So what you would want to do is since we're using the Maelstrom daggers, you would want to use Rend. Now Rend is going to be freaking OP because It lasts 16 seconds. 10 seconds of the Rend will get Major Slayer. 10, and the whole duration of Rend will get these massive boost to from the Maelstrom daggers, along with the dual wield passes. We'll get into that. Execute damage. Again, Rend also heals you, so that adds a little bit of survivability to the DK as well, which we previously didn't have because Rend is up more often than standard, right? We get mitigation from standard, but since it's such a high cost ult, you can't really count on that. So yeah, so that's how you would use War Machine with the Maelstrom daggers here. You would want to use Rend. Obviously, you can empower Dawnbreaker, but you're gonna get so much damage. I'm telling you, the Rend is full dot, so it gains Thaumaturge, it crit hit damage, penetration, mighty. It dips into 4 trees, and those 4 trees are gonna be really strong on the DK because we're specking high into Thaumaturge, and the dual wield passive lets you have massive 20% damage. I'm just gonna tell you right now before we even get to that. 20% extra damage versus enemies under 25% health. Rend is also AoE, guys, so if your tanks are stacking the adds, so like hard mode VMAL, right? So you have the Hulk, an assassin comes in, and the tanks got them nice bundled up. You rapid strikes, you Rend, and you rapid strikes the first target. So the first target you hit will get the Maelstrom empowered buff. I just go ahead and tell you that right now. The person that you rapid strikes, then you use Rend will be empowered on that target. Now the other targets will take a regular Rend attack, but 20% extra damage. The Hulk's coming down, it's getting low. It's under 25% health. It's getting 20% boosted damage to Rend. Then you got, again, that assassin that came in. He's also getting hit, and you're getting healed off this damage. So it's very, very strong in terms of survivability, doing massive damage in execute phase when DKs don't have an execute. So that's actually very cool. And I wanted to show you guys, I'll show you guys that in the DPS part. It won't be very apparent because the dummy has only 6 mil health, and at 25% he doesn't have that much anyway. But in a longer fight when the boss has like 89 million freaking health, 25 to 0 is going to be a big window of opportunity for Rend and Major Slayer to really take effect. So I wanted to talk to you guys about that as well. So this setup has 3 different ways you can play, right? And you can use each one of those ways to play. So you can use regen food and do light attacks mainly. You can use max health, max stam food, and do mainly heavy attacks while using the VMA daggers. So you do rapid strikes, heavy attack dot, rapid strikes, heavy attack dot, etc. And so Major Slayer is pretty freaking awesome. Awesome in the sense of it gives you 15% extra damage to yourself and 2 closest allies. So you're going to want to be away from the tank, away from the healers, and just use it smart, right? Just be like, I'm about to, obviously your group's going to know when you're ulting if you're ulting for burst, but if you're just keep continuously doing Rend, say I'm about to ult, and then watch all your buddies, run and just jump on you, right? So guys, we'll get into the skills, the skills and passives, and then the character sheet and so forth. So I'll see you guys later. Alrighty, so we're gonna. Alrighty, so we're here with the skills and passives section, and we're going to talk about how they work in relation to each other. So I'm putting all of the builds into one on the skills and passives part, so I don't have to film them separately. So bear with me here. We're going to go through a couple different things. Pretty much all the builds use the same thing. Bars wise, the only difference is if you're using BMA daggers, you gotta have rapid strikes here, and that's the only difference. So uh, also if you're using a light attack build, you might have this here instead of molten armaments, but that's about the only difference here. So we're going to talk about the skills and how they work and why they work so well. So let's start with the front bar here. We got Rending Slashes. Again, very, very effective bleed. It goes through all armor. So it doesn't scale off penetration, but what happens is if you're using a heavy attack build like Flame Knight or the Poison Knight, you don't have a lot of penetration, so Rending Slashes becomes more effective, which is very, very nice. If you're using Two Fang Snake, you have a lot of penetration, and so it becomes a little bit less effective, but it's still a very nice dodge. Also, you can empower it with the Rapid Strikes build with the VMA daggers. So we got Rending Slashes, we have Venomous Claw. Now, this ability is strong, very strong. It has an initial hit, it has the damage over time, and the poison damage over time is increased. The damage is increased for the duration, throughout the duration. It deals 12% more damage every 2 seconds. That is amazing. So you're going to want to let this duration go all the way through to get the max benefit. And it only costs 1,000 stamina. That's awesome. We have 1,500 stamina cost right here, 1,000 stamina cost right here. Boom. Already low cost. And if we're doing the Maelstrom rotation, we can sustain it very easily. If we're doing the heavy attack rotation, no problem. So we have Deadly Cloak here, no brainer. It does cost a little bit more because it's an AoE skill, but it is big time defense. It does 25% reduced damage from AoE abilities. Very, very good. I like to keep it up 100% of the time, just as a defensive standpoint. Also helps, your healers out because you don't want to take big damage. You'll take less damage. It doesn't do a whole lot of DPS in single target. It does do a good amount, and then gets increased by the dual wield passives. But again, it's mainly here for the defense, more so than the offense. So this ability right here, this spot, is Noxious Breath. It's going to give you Major Fracture if you're in solo play. Very, very, very good. Again, another little tip here, you can apply this to the portal and BMA. So when the mobs are spawning, you can apply Major Fracture to them. Also very good for boss burns. It has a weak initial hit, but a decent dot damage over time ability, and it's poison damage, which is great for the poison build if you're using the Venom set. It's another added dot that's really good. Lasts 10 seconds, which is pretty long. Doesn't cost a whole lot, but it is an AoE skill, but it doesn't cost a whole lot. You can see that it's 700 less than Deadly Cloak. I think the reason for that is because it's conal and not full AoE. So that's pretty nice. But if you're using the Rapid Strikes VMA dagger build, you'll have this here. If you're using the light attack build, you'll have Evil Hunter here. So on the light attack build, you'll have 3% more weapon damage here. But on the heavy attack build, you'll have Molten Armaments here. And what this does is this gives your heavy attacks 40% more damage while active. So this is very important. Again, it costs Magicka, so we're pretty cool there. The only downside to this ability, I would say, is that it doesn't give weapon damage. It gives, Major Sorcery, which is spell damage. If it gave weapon damage, spell damage, and then had, this one does heavy attack damage and the other one did something else, that would be pretty awesome for solo play or for people that don't like to use a bunch of potions to get their buff. But for those that are doing like trials and stuff, you're most likely using weapon pots, so it's not too bad. So this is going to give our heavy attack big damage. Really big damage. It's going to make up for, not using a skill. Heavy attacks are going to give us our resources, and so this really plays into that, increasing our damage even more. Again, we have Flawless Dawnbreaker here for the extra 5% weapon damage. Very nice. Again, if you substitute out one of the sets that was in the build to improve the build. So say you took off Sunderflame for War Machine, you would want to use Flawless Dawnbreaker over Standard because Standard costs 250. You'd get better uptime on Dawnbreaker. If on the Combustion build, if you wanted to substitute out one of the sets, so if you wanted to substitute 2-piece Krog and 3 Vicious Ophidian from the Maelstrom build, your bar would look like this, and you'd want Rend, because Rend is 25 ult more than Dawnbreaker and will do substantially greater DPS because you're empowering it with the VMA daggers. And it'll get almost full duration of the Major Slayer, which is extremely strong. Especially on a DK when you spec into a lot into Thaumaturge CP. It's very, very good. So that's the VMA. This would be the VMA bar build-up right here for if you wanted to do a War Machine with the 2 Fanged Snake setup with the VMA daggers. I know this is a lot into one video, so don't worry about that. So if you're using the heavy attack, no VMA dagger build, then your bars look like that. Just like that. And all the bars will be on the website. I just wanted to go over how the passives work with the skills. So for the Stam Dragonknight, we have burning and poison effects are going to be 66% stronger on a Dragonknight. Also another thing is increases the damage of your fiery breaths, all this good stuff, and the duration. Poison and flame damage area of effects, so pretty much just Noxus Breath will do more damage with that passive. You don't really need any of these passives except for this last one, which is a nice spell damage bonus, or I'm sorry, spell resistance bonus. Again, lasts longer on your Molten Armaments, which is really nice. Battle Roar right here. So this is going to be a part of your sustain, right? So when you use an ultimate, you get 46 health, magicka, and stamina for each point of the ultimate's cost. So 46 on the 125. So each point of the ultimate's cost, you'll get an extra 46 in each resource. They changed this. It used to go off of how much I believe your stat pool was. I think they changed this. Yep, they did. So also this one right here, which is pretty freaking awesome. All right, so we already have a lot of sustain in the heavy attack builds, but when we click Molten Armaments, we're going to get some stamina back here. Right here, we'll get 990 stamina back. It used to give you 5% of your max stam back, I believe, but they changed this again. I believe to character level, so it's always going to be this value no matter what. And also we get minor brutality when we activate this ability. So in some of my DPS tests, you'll see that the tank is doing Igneous Shield. Pretty much it's a guaranteed that you're going to have a DK in your group, and he's going to be doing Igneous Shield. So the minor brutality buff isn't much of a big deal because you're almost 100% time. I would say 100% of the time you're always going to have this buff, because he needs to cast it one time out of 20 seconds, and bet your ass he's casting that more than once every 20. So this will be, all the bars will be on the website if you get confused. So for each individual build, there'll be a link in the description, and you can go look at the bars. I just wanted to go over the passives in one go here. For dual wield, there is a increased damage for dual wield abilities by 20% against enemies under 25% health. So that means Rending Slashes, Deadly Cloak, Rapid Strikes, if you're using the VMA build, and Rend get extra damage under 25% health. Now the DK doesn't have an execute, so this is a nice boost to our damage once we get 25. Everyone's going to be swapping over to Killer's Blade, Impel, Jesus Beam, Radiant Oppression, and the sorts are going to execute at 20%, whatnot. We don't have an execute, but we have a dual wield execute, which is actually very, very nice, especially if you're using the VMA dagger build with War Machine using Rend. Let's see. What else? Oh, so that's pretty much the front bar. Again, for the builds that have low penetration, we want 2 axes, and so the axes will proc a bleed. And since we have 2 axes, we'll get a 16% chance to proc that bleed, which is very, very nice. Another thing is the daggers will give us 5% crit rating, which is very, very huge. That's why we want 2 daggers. If we have max penetration, definitely want those daggers. All right, so let's move on to the back bar. The back bar here is poison injection. Poison injection is a phenomenal skill. It's ranged. It has an initial hit. It has a great damage over time. It lasts great, a really good amount, and it has an execute part. So this is another weapon thing that we have for an execute, which is very, very awesome. Endless Hail, best damage ability that the stamina classes have. Goes great with the Maelstrom bow here. Again, if you don't have the Maelstrom bow, you can go with the ones I suggested earlier, but the Maelstrom bow boosts this damage to such high potential. It's so good, and this skill attacks on a 0.5, which makes it super effective for proccing things, for doing damage to keep up a certain buff like Two-Fang Snake, or if you're a Sork, you crit surge, etc. I know we're not talking about swords, but this skill is super, super strong. Ramming Trap here, again, on the back bar. We're going to place it down before we do our Hail, and then we're going to do Poison Injection and so forth. You want a light attack in between all of these because this passive is actually very important. Very important. Only in certain cases would you not really care as much about this passive, but for all the builds that don't require Maelstrom daggers, stuff like that, or if you're using axes and so forth, this is extremely strong. So every time you light attack, you gain 5% damage on your bow abilities, which is 2 abilities right here, by 5% for 5 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. That's a lot of 5. So 5% for 5 seconds, stacking up to 5 times, right? That's strong. You're getting so much damage on top of your VMA bow, increasing your hail, on top of Hawkeye, increasing your hail. Oh, it's so strong, right? Super, super, super strong. And you'll get the max benefit out of it if you light attack, boom, 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 and then come back. Your hail's got 5 seconds on it, whatnot. 7 seconds when you flip over, and then boom, it's getting so much increase in damage. It's extremely strong. Razor Caltrops, we can sustain it on the heavy attack builds. We can sustain it on the dubious food builds. It is good to go. We can sustain it on DK in general because we get so much resources back from using an ultimate, using an Earth and Heart ability, dubious food, or heavy attacking, whatnot. Sustain is great, and so we can carry the weight of the high cost Caltrops, casting in every 12 seconds. It's perfectly fine. Now this skill, right? Flames of Oblivion. This skill hits so hard for a flame damage skill, right? If we're speccing into high penetration, it's usually physical. And since this does flame damage, it scales off spell pen. So if we have sharpened weapons or points in master at arms, this skill hits hard. It always has hit hard throughout all of the patches. It's just a great single target skill. It just does so much damage per hit, as it's going out. Boom, boom, boom. You just click it once and it does its thing. This thing is awesome, and it lasts long. That's what I like. It lasts 15 seconds, just like Deadly Cloak. So you do that one last, and you just flip switch, and boom. It's this little, has a cool effect too. That's why I like it. And so it flies around you, and then it shoots at the enemy, and man, it hit strong. For a flame ability on a stand build, that it hits really, really awesome. So we're using Standard of Might here. Again, if you're using a different setup, so like War Machine, you would be using your front bar ultimate, Rend or Dawnbreaker, or if you go with Standard of Might, this is also another good path. You could go with the bow on the back bar as well. It's all up to preference here. Standard is still a very strong ultimate, even though it does flame damage. It's still very strong for increasing your damage for 17 seconds. Yeah, 17 seconds of 15% increased damage. So when you use this ultimate, you're going to want to make sure that you have all your dots out, drop your ultimate, go back to your front bar, and then as your dots are going out, you're going to apply them again. And this does phenomenal damage. It's always has been one of the best ultimates in the game, and it still holds strong even though it costs 250. It's still a very, very good ultimate. But there is other options. Again, if you're using the bow ultimate, you're going to want to use it last, right before you swap, because you want to get all those light attacks out, light attack, light attack, light attack, and then use the bow ultimate and then swap. And that way the bow has the full duration for the time it shoots to the time it's done. It'll be 5.2 seconds, I think, at max rank. And you want the turret morph. It'll shoot and it'll be boosted so much by the Hawkeye passive. You'll love it. So you can use that if you're using the Maelstrom daggers. You can use Rend with War Machine, etc. You can use Dawnbreaker if you're using War Machine on a heavy attack build that isn't using VMA daggers. There's so much to play with, guys, and it's all up to you. It's whatever you like. It's whatever works best for you. Will be the best for you. To put it simply as I can. So, guys, that was the skills and passives. Oh, before I forget, I always forget this. Very important alchemy. I'm pretty sure Outcast has a video guide on how to get this up pretty fast. It's super effective. It's a must-have because if you're using weapon damage pots, this will keep up your buff all the time, and it'll keep up your sustain all the time. It's very important to have this. Again, racial passives. Obviously, if you're using heavy attack build, go with Khajiit. If you're going, you need more sustain, Redguard is the king of that because it has stamina recovery, max stam, and stamina on hit. As far as other passives that are important, Slayer is very important because when you put on these skills here, you get 3% weapon damage for having them slotted. And on top of Flawless Dawnbreaker being 5%, and you get extra 3 from Evil Hunter, makes it very, very nice. If you're killing Undead, Daedric, or Werewolf, maybe you're in a dungeon or you're doing, Dragonstar Arena, there's also those things. And your Fighter's Guild abilities, you need this one if you're doing, again, versus Undead, Daedric, and Werewolf, 20% stronger. Very, very good. I don't think there's any other things here except for, basically have your medium armor and your dual wield and your bow passive leveled, etc. So I think we're good here, guys. We're going to move on to the character sheet and take a look at it so you can compare stats, or maybe if you go without your gear, unlike me, I'm kind of poor here. Send me your money. JK. All right, so you can send me the money. We'll take a look at the character sheet here, and so we can compare stats, and you can see the Mundus stone, food, etc. So we'll head over to that section in a bit. I'll see you there. All right, guys, we're at the champion. All right, guys, we're at the character sheet part, and we're gonna go over a couple different character sheets because the combustion build has, 3 different playstyles. Actually, two different playstyles. One of them is the same. So this right here, you'll see that my health is a little low. Now I play a little bit on the dangerous side, so with Eben, I'm looking at 17.2, and then with Warhorn, I'm a little bit higher than that. I'm like 18.5. So that's fine with me. Obviously, if you're not in an extremely experienced group, a little bit more points in health, because there might be downtimes on Warhorn, or maybe you don't have Eben in the group. So just keep that in mind, that you'll want to put more points in health here. 37k stam because I'm a red guard, so if you're Khajiit, feel free to have that boost in crit hit damage, but you'll see a little dip in stam, which isn't that bad. I'm using the max health, max stam food on most of my builds that run on the DK, because we do those heavy attacks that do hit a little bit harder than most classes, and that's our way to sustain. So we're using Thief Mundus Stone, very important. Pretty much going to see that in all DPS builds, because crit hit damage crit chance is very important, because we get so much crit hit damage from the CP, from, if you're a Nightblade or a Templar, you'd get an extra 10%, so forth. So Thief is very strong because you can only get crit from your gear. Of course, you get crit from, major buff, then you have minor, and then you have CP passive crit, but those are all going to be pretty much stagnant now, because you're always just going to have them. You're always going to get a pot. You're going to have a Nightblading group, and you're going to have enough CP to get the passive, right? So the only place to get crit chance is from your gear or your Mundus, obviously, and the daggers. But Thief is going to be extremely strong, because we haven't hit that point yet where I don't think we ever will, unless some crazy gear comes out that has crit hit chance that will switch to the Shadow. So Thief, pretty freaking strong. Going to see it everywhere. Our weapon damage is not too bad. We haven't buffed up yet, but not really a big focus here, because we're focused on penetration. We're focused on dot damage and, critting a lot here. And so our weapon damage doesn't need to be like 6,000, 5,000. It's not going to gain that much weapon damage, we'd have to give up something. We don't want to do that. Unseen weapon damage here is that we get Maelstrom and powered dots. So we're getting another 2,000 right here. So we have 5,000 weapon damage on our empowered dots. We just don't have them we don't have that damage all the time. That's the difference. Which I think is very effective. So our stamina recovery is a little low if we're using the heavy attack. If we're using the dubious food here, right, you see some pretty decent stamina recovery here. Obviously, the health's going to be lower, so you're going to need to put anywhere from 6 to 19 points in here, depending on what kind of group buffs you have. In my other videos, I do have 19 here, just because I want to let you guys know that 19 is a sweet spot. If you're in a more experienced group, you can start taking those points out and then rely on Eben and Warhorn, etc., stuff like that. So this is the War Machine setup, right? So with the War Machine setup, you'd want 2 sharpened here, and then you have War Machine helmet, shoulders, and then rings. So let's look at the Combustion setup. So again, your stats are going to look very similar. Weapon damage pretty close. Weapon critical could be higher if I had a Divine's piece here again, and if it was golded, my shoulder was infused. Again, another bad trait. So you'll have a little bit more crit if you have bizzed up stuff. Stamina regen didn't change. Max health stam probably didn't change either, besides not being gold. With the dubious food here, and then with this food, again, pretty much the same stats here. I think a little bit less stamina, because we're getting pen instead of 2-piece stam. We're getting a little bit more weapon crit here with 3-piece versus Obsidian. So we have a little bit more weapon crit for stam. Again, better, much better. Flat damage is not as good as crit chance and crit hit damage, because they can scale up real high. you obviously want flat damage somewhere, but we're getting that from the Maelstrom daggers. So we have crit hit damage, good weapon damage when we're buffed up. When we're fully buffed up, our regen. I guess I should have ate the other food to see that, but we're at 3,500 plus the Maelstrom daggers. If we use the dubious food, which I'm gonna run out soon if I keep eating, it's 1,391. So that's pretty good. On top of being a DK, you get Battle Roar, and if you use your Igneous, Earth and Heart ability, I don't know. I call it Igneous Shield or Igneous Weapon because that's the skills I use to get the stand back. But if you use any Earth and Heart ability right here, you'll get 990 stamina. I'm sure we went over that already, but just to go over it one more time. So you'll need points into health if you use the dubious food. Depending on what kind of group buffs, obviously you'll have to take a look at that and how many points you put into health there. Another thing you can do here, which is different, I did test the damage on Rend, for example, between dubious food and max health food with the 1 to 2 stamina regen glyphs right here. They're near almost identical. One side you get a little bit more stam and more regen. The other one's like less stam, more regen, etc. So one has like more stam and less regen. The other one has more regen and less stam. So they both, and weapon damage scales differently than max stam does. So to each their own. So you can do either way. You can go max health and then put regen glyphs on. It's whatever way you want to do it. Whatever works best for you. I just prefer to just have the same enchants and just swap food around. So yeah, guys, that was the character sheet. Food, Mundus, stamina, weapon damage, crit. Obviously, I don't have golded gear, so you'll see a little bit more critical. And then you got to understand that having a Nightblade in your group will give you, I think, another 3%, because that's the passive that they give to people. So you're looking at about, with a red guard, you're looking at like 82% crit, I think. Yeah, 82% crit. With a sheet, you're looking at 90. Oh, 90% crit. If only you could sustain. So if you're doing a heavy attack version of this build, Khajiit might be the bread and butter there. I gotta look into that. I do have a Khajiit, so it's probably pretty nasty. We're gonna go ahead and skip the champion point part. I'm just gonna tell you why. I'm poor. Like, I have 59k left, and I have to use that for potions, right? So I can't just keep flipping the CP around to show them for the video. I'll write them on the website, though. I saved the CP from when I used it to test, and that's why I'm so poor. So I'll put the CP on the website, just not in the video, because I forgot to film it when I did it. So just bear with me, guys. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the add-ons and DPS part. Where I explain like my thought process of rotation, the add-ons I use to help me do that, etc. So I'll see you in that second, guys. Alright, guys, so we're here with the DPS rotation for the Combustion build. We're going to go over kind of like my thought process behind it, a fixed rotation and a non-fixed rotation. How I go about doing that. So as we talked about, we have Surrender to help us with our buff tracking and basically our dot tracking. It's called buff tracking, but dude, it's all about them dots. So what's going to happen is, on just a skeleton, he's just going to stand here, and get shit on, right? We don't have to do any mechanics. So a fixed rotation is good, and an idea of how to do a rotation is good, because these dots have a certain time limit. They have different effects, like Deadly Cloak is giving us mitigation and stuff like that. We have to take into account when we're doing our DPS. So what I do is I come up with what I think is a good rotation, and then I adapt it per the fight. So on hard mode Rakat, I always make sure I do rapid strikes as he's moving paths, and I move with him. And as I'm moving with him, I'm just going to do rapid strike and then move to my back bar, my pad, and then redo my back bar. Because it's time to do that. All of these are the most important buffs right here on my back bar. Trap, Hail, Injection, Caltrops. These are going to be my top DPS. And so it's important that I do rapid strikes as he's moving. So you see the animation? I'm doing rapid strikes as he's moving. And then I put my trap and do all my rotation. Just like that. So it's good to have a rotation for the front bar. But let's say I have just got to the front bar and he happens to be moving. He's not going to do a gun or anything in hard mode or caught. Again, if you haven't seen this fight, you don't know what I'm talking about. Basically, he moves from this location to the next location, and you know exactly where he's going. So I haven't even got out my front bar dots. So if I know he's going to move because he teleports to the middle of the pad and then he jumps and teleports over there. So what I do is I just make sure I have enough time because this is 0.6 seconds. Make sure I have my good dot out there, and then I'll do a rapid strikes as I'm moving, and then I get all my extra buffs out on my back bar because they were here, right? But even though the duration is not up, he's moving, so I need to redo my back bar. So that's kind of like the non-fixed rotation where the back bar, the buffs, the big damage abilities, they take priority over doing a fixed rotation, right? So I just wanted to make sure everyone kind of knew about that. And it's important to know that which skills are your most important skills, why they're the most important, and so forth. So Hail is going to be your #1 DPS ability because it attacks on a 0.5, it does a lot of damage, and it's extremely strong with the Maelstrom bow. Trap is extremely strong because it gives you minor force. That's a lot of damage. Poison injection is extremely strong because we're speccing in a thaumaturge. It's an execute. It's getting empowered by the Maelstrom daggers and so forth. Caltrops is AoE, but it's massive single target. I mean, it does a lot of single target damage now. And stuff like that. So you got to take those things into account. Make sure that you have Deadly Cloak up for your defenses. This, along with the shields from your tanks, will keep you alive. And obviously heals from your healers, etc. So let's just talk about how I set up a DPS parse, or how I'm setting up in my fights. So if I'm running towards a target that is already there, the boss is already spawned, he's right there in that location, that's where we're going to attack him, right? Then the first thing I'm going to do is buff up what I can before the fight. So Deadly Cloak, Molten Armament, and the Flames of Oblivion. I'm going to do these first. If you want to make sure that Flames of Oblivion isn't the first thing that hits the target, then you can just do Flames of Oblivion in your normal rotation at the end when you swap sides. Or you can just use it at the start. Doesn't matter. So I'm going to do Deadly Cloak this. I'm going to run at the boss, shooting Hail, Trap, and just start my rotation there. So that was the fast representation. Now we're going to go over it slowly. So what you want to do is you want to buff up Deadly Cloak, Molten Armament, and run at the target. Shooting Hail because it's a ranged ability, getting there, putting Trap down, Light Attack, Injection, Light Attack, Caltrops, Light Attack, Oblivion, and Swap. You see this animation right here? It's like I'm throwing a tantrum. I'm throwing my hands at the ground, I'm pissed off, right? We can just cut all that out. We don't need that negativity, right? We don't need that. So we just cut it all out by clicking the Flames of Oblivion and clicking bar swap immediately afterwards. So now I'm at my front bar and I've done the skill. I've accomplished two things in one. Once I come to my front bar, I'm going to do Rapid Strikes because we have the Maelstrom daggers and we need to empower our dot. So I'm going to do Rapid Strikes, Light Attack, Claw. Or if I'm doing the heavy attack build, since I have Molten Armaments, I have a 4-second window here, if you read this, to do a dot after I do Rapid Strikes. So I can do Rapid Strikes, heavy attack, dot. And you see the visual right here on my hands after I do a Rapid Strikes, they glow. So that'll be your duration of the time. See, 4 seconds gone. I can't empower my next dot. I can do my next dot, but it won't be empowered, right? So I can do a Rapid Strike, heavy attack, boom, claw. That'll give us a lot of sustain doing it this way. Yeah, so that's how I would do it. So let's look at, so we looked at the back bar, right? We applied our back bar buffs. That's phase 1. We're going to the front, which is phase 2. After we did Flames of Oblivion swap, we're in phase 2, which is rapid strikes, heavy attack, claw, rapid strike, heavy attack, rending slashes. I'm pretty sure you can get into light attack as well. So rapid strike, heavy attack. Yeah, so this is kind of like a mixture here. So we're doing our sustain, and we're getting a little bit of weave DPS right here. So on our front bar, we're going to do rapid strikes, and we want to negate the cost of our abilities, so we're going to do a heavy attack, and we have bolted armaments buff. So we're doing rapid strikes, heavy attack, claw, and then we do a light attack before we do a next rapid strike. So we do a heavy attack, slashes, light attack, rapid strikes, claw, light attack, rapid strike, rending slashes. So we have heavy attacks between after our rapid strikes, then a dot, and then we have light attacks after our dots between rapid strikes, if that makes sense. So it's going to just look like this. I'm not even going to say a word, just look at what's going on. Just like that, right? So that's going to give us a lot of mixture of DPS. We're going to have the heavy attack DPS, we're going to have the light attack DPS. Obviously, heavy attacks got nerfed by 15%. That doesn't mean they do like no damage. They do good damage, and they gave you sustain. And then you have the light attack mixture between the rapid strikes that will give you a little bit of extra DPS as well there. Obviously, light attacks aren't boosted by molten armaments, but they are extremely strong. Okay. So we kind of went over how the front bar works and how the back bar works. Now I want to talk about how standard works, because standard is really important. So we gain 15% damage when we drop this. So what happens is, when we don't drop this at the start of the fight, because if we did that, we'd use the whole duration of the standard just applying our dots, and then the standard would be gone. What we do is we walk at the target doing our normal rotation. So we buff up, hail, trap, light attack projection, caltrops, light attack this. And then we go to our front bar, rapid strike. Then we do deadly cloak swap. So now we're at the back bar, then we drop standard. You see all of our dots are still out. And we can just continue to do our rotation. And so we get a huge benefit from having our dots out. Just like this. So you can get in a mixture depending on how your resources are. So what I want to talk about is when we use the heavy attack rotation in the Maelstrom daggers, what you need to be aware of is your stamina bar, okay? So we're using the max health, max stam food. And what this does is going to apply a lot of damage, and it's going to give us a good boost of health. Obviously, my health is a little low, but in a raid setting, it's going to be higher, okay? So what I need to understand is that heavy attacks give me back stamina. Light attacks do more damage consistently because they're faster and you can get more out and do more skills. So what happens is, if I drop a standard, my stam is full. I no longer need to do heavy attacks through every rotation, like every dot. I can do light attacks, and I can just kind of manage my stam that way. Obviously, if I'm at the 50% mark, I don't want to do light attacks all the time. I need to play the catch-up game at that point. So you need to understand that you can do a mixture of both. Both are really good DPS because we're using the molten armaments and so forth. But so if I use the standard and I'm back up to 75%, my pot's about to be available, I can just do light attacks instead, right? And then I use a pot, and then boom, my stam's back up, right? So I'm playing the stand management game here. I don't necessarily have to heavy attack. It's just there if I need it, right? And I will need it because during mechanics, like you'll have to break free, maybe you don't roll dodge, etc. You accidentally threw 2 caltrops, whatever. That heavy attack damage is there, and the heavy attack damage is good, and the rotation continues. I just wanted to let you know, guys, if you're using the max health, max stam food, you don't necessarily need to heavy attack every time, only because DK has a lot of sustain. You know, with being a red guard also helps. But having, you know, every time you cast this ability right here, you gain almost 1k stamina. Every time you use an ult, big ult like this, you gain a ton of stam back anyway. So and you have potions, so you have to understand where your stam's at, what the fight's going to be requiring of you, and if you can light attack or if you need to heavy attack. Also, one thing to note is that you don't want the heavy attack when you have 25% stam. You want to be heavy attacking when you have 60% stam. You know, you don't want to play the catch-up game all the time. You want to be ahead of the game. So what I'm talking about is, let's say if I'm doing heavy attacks at this point, you know, I'm just going to be slowly. So let's say I'm waiting on my standard. It's already, like, I'm not even close to having a standard, right? I need to be doing heavy attacks. I have to know that I'm going to be doing heavy attacks. But if since standard's up, right? I just keep doing light attack. Because I got that big boost of damage. I'm sorry, of sustain. And damage, right? Now I'm at the 50% mark, you see here? I'm just going to do a heavy attack. It's going, basically what heavy attacks do is keep my stamina from not absolutely dumping down. But when I have a potion, when I have a standard available to me, I need to understand and know that I can light attack more often. It's just something that you're going to have to get used to, but if you want to just always play safe, you can just do a rapid strike to a heavy attack into a dot. I just wanted to go over that real quick. If you went the other route, which would be to, I'm not out of combat, but which would be to use dubious food. So what you'd have to do here is you would have to put more points into health. I'm just not going to do that real quick just to show you, but you're going to gain that stamina recovery from the dubious food. You're going to lose a little bit of max stam, but what you're going to gain is not having to do those heavy attacks as often. And so what happens is you just put an extra ability here. Most likely Evil Hunter, you do have this ability, but I find this to be kind of wonky within the rotation of, you know, all these dots and having to do rapid strikes within the dot. So I just take that dot. I don't use this one. I just use an extra 3% weapon damage here. And so what I do is I can light attack more often. So as you can see, my stam is doing just fine by itself. And then you gotta remember that you're gonna have the standard up right here. Boom, I get a standard up. My stuff goes way up, etc. So it looks like I'm in a bad spot, right? My stamina is extremely low, right? Watch this. So you just got to be aware. I took a pot and I used standard. You just got to be aware of your surroundings, and like if you're getting low and you don't have a standard and a pot is just a little bit out of reach, that's where your team comes in. That's when the orbs and the shards come in. So you have to use all of these things to your advantage on how to sustain. I've probably spent a lot of time on that, so I just wanted to let you guys know that's how I do it. So if we just want to go over the rotation here. Also, no, there's one more rotation that we're going to go over. Sorry. So Combustion build also can utilize War Machine to a great benefit, and that is going to be through Rend. So if you want to go the War Machine route, right? So you go jewelry, and then you take off the helmet, which would be Krog. So you'd need another sharpened dagger here, or you'd have to put points into penetration. What you can do here is you basically get the standard buff, right? So this might be the best setup for just actual damage. So having 15% extra damage and using a different ultimate instead of standard, which will give you fire damage. Also, thing to note, standard also gives you damage reduction. So just be wary of that. If that's more your style, then go ahead and use the standard. But so what happens is, or you could just use standard backbar with Major Slayer, and you'd have 30% damage. But that's just something kind of cool about that. But anyway, I would suggest Rend. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use Rend, which also, we talked about the skills, passives, gets boosted. We have a little bit of execute damage here. Rend is going to heal us, so that's really, really good for us, stamina builds. It's going to do a lot of damage over time for 16 seconds, which will gain the full benefit of Major Slayer. And it does AoE damage, so it's very, very nice. Although it's a very small area, so you have to be aware of that. So what things that I do, I'm just gonna go over like how I would use Rend right here. So like in a boss setting or whatnot. So most people probably will be using Flawless Dawnbreaker, because it gives you weapon damage while slotted. Maybe you're using an infused piece. Probably not for the Maelstrom daggers though, but it does empower this 5-second dot. But I'm telling you right now, these hits are going to be so high on the Rend, especially during execute phase, that it is definitely warranted. Also, it heals you. So I just want to go over something about Rend real quick that I thought is very important. Okay, so for example, say you have a couple mobs here. You have the boss. I don't know why I can't target that front guy, but anyway. So all these are targetable. Okay, so the target that you do the rapid strikes on is the one that gets the Maelstrom buff. So when you use Rend, you see how the tooltip is going up extremely high. It's 48k, right? I use rapid strikes. It gives it 2,000 extra weapon damage, which is 65. Not to mention, if I was buffed up all the way, it'd be even more. It's at 72 now. If I get, Combat Prayer and Spell Paracure and Minor Brutality, I mean, I'm looking at almost 100k damage. Tooltip damage. I'm not even using the right food, so let's just take a look at this. So if we do the heavy attack rotation with War Machine and having this, we're looking at massive damage. Yeah, it's at almost 75,000. Just sitting here, self buff. So what happens is when you use Rend, the target that you rapid strikes is going to get that big boost, and then everyone else is going to take 54,000, right? So you're gonna rapid strike this guy, and then you have 4 seconds. So what I do is I move. Sometimes in my video, you'll see I move to get into the best position to Rend, and then I Rend all the targets. This guy is going to be taking a shit ton of damage, this guy, and then these guys are going to be taking just the regular Rend damage. But it's extremely effective. Look at that. Look at all that healing. Woof. Right there. So let's just take a look at the combat metric here. If it updates, I might still be in combat. That actually probably. Okay, so so look, this guy right here, he took the most damage, right? And my Rens were hitting everyone else, and he took a shit ton of damage because we rapid striked him first. So also healing received, pretty OP. We're getting almost 5,000, and it can crit, so it's almost 5,000. Tick heals there, which is extremely important. So that's just how I use rend, and how you just have to know that when you have rend up, you can get more healing done and more damage out if you just understand how the Maelstrom daggers work and how you can use rend to your benefit. Rend with major slayers is a very effective skill. So the way that's just how I wanted to discuss rend there. So yeah, guys, hopefully this wasn't too long or too crazy. Maybe I worded something wrong. If you have any questions, feel free to comment down below about the DPS rotation part. If you're on NAPC, I would love to go and help you at the guild house here, or at Kraz's house. Um, I'd love to help you here. If you want to come here and just DPS parse, I can watch you and tell you, give you some little tips here, like little things here, or understand why you're doing something differently, etc. Whatever works best for you will work best. But if you want to understand like how I'm doing something, I can come here and show you, and maybe I watch you try and do it, and then I can give you feedback on it, etc. So PCNA. Oh, I do have a EU. I do have EU as well, PC. Pretty close to max CP, so I'm not sure that matters, but I can still watch you on PC EU if you have any questions about rotation. Again, if I missed something, please ask me in the comment section or on my website at fearturbo.com. We're going to go off to the DPS part of the video. We're going to be doing one with light attacks with the dubious food, one with heavy attacks with the max stam, max stam, max health food, and then we're going to do one with war machine here with rend. And I hope you guys enjoy. Have a good day.